Look, sometimes it happens. Hey y'all, I'm Renee, and welcome to Tater Town. First, I want to give a shout out to Dawn for getting me this awesome Twin Peaks Blue Rose shirt at the Twin Peaks Festival about a week or so ago. Thank you so much, I love it. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about emergency medical supplies. So, livestock emergencies can occur unexpectedly, and without the right tools and knowledge, the outcome can be devastating for your animals and you. In these high pressure situations, sometimes every minute counts, and being prepared can help you respond quickly and effectively. A well stocked medical kit can help you stabilize your animal and prevent further injury or complication until veterinary care is available. Having the necessary supplies on hand can also help reduce your stress and anxiety, allowing you to think more clearly and make better decisions. Because there's nothing more stressful than knowing an animal needs something immediately and you don't have that item on hand, or maybe it's not available at the store and there's no time to order online and get it delivered in a timely manner. This is especially important if you live far from veterinary clinics or have limited access to emergency care. Not to mention, emergency vet care can be very expensive. Now, this is not a replacement for veterinary care in every circumstance, but rather a way to bridge the gap until you can get professional help. Now, I'm not going to go over how to take care of all of the issues that can happen in this short video. Okay, let's be real, it's not going to be a short video. But I am going to get you started with a list of supplies you should have on hand in case of an emergency. The most important piece of advice I can give you is, first and foremost, know your animals. Pay attention to their normal behavior, because once you know it, it's easier to identify when something isn't right. Is your chicken spending more time away from the flock and not as interested in food? Is your cow limping? Is your donkey or horse lying down way more than usual and not wanting to get up? Knowing these things are not normal behavior for your individual animal is the first sign you need to take action. The second important piece of advice I can give you is, always make sure when using sprays or wound care, even fly sprays, that it is safe for the animal you intend to use it on. We have horses, donkeys, cows, chickens, and dogs, and some things are safe to use on all of them, where others are species specific. And yes, horses and donkeys are both in the equine family, but there are some things that you can use on a horse that you cannot use on a donkey. The same goes for treating egg-laying hens, meat-producing birds, lactating cattle, and such. Some medications and topical treatments may have a withholding period before you can eat that egg or drink that milk. So always read the fine print. So let's take a look at what I have in my kit and why I have it. If you find this video helpful or you like any of my videos, please be sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because it really does help me to keep making these videos so I can help you do those things you never thought you could. Now let's get back. I'll put the links in the description to everything I talk about here, so if you're interested in something, you can find it there. Also, I'm not sponsored by any of these products. They're just simply things I personally use and like. Okay, the first thing I'm going to talk about are some of the tools you may need. Things like towels that you can use for cleaning and comfort for the chickens to wrap them in order to keep them calm. I've got syringes. I've got 20 milliliter syringes, 10 milliliter syringes, and 1 milliliter syringes. And I've also got this guy here, which is a bird feeding syringe. So if you have to give something in their mouth, this will help you get it to the back of their throat, especially if they need to be fed. I've also got popsicle sticks or tongue depressors, and these can be really helpful for applying ointments or salves. I've also got disposable gloves. I have a ton of these laying around the house, and this is for both you and your animal. You don't want to infect a wound with bacteria from your hands, and you certainly don't want to risk getting an infection from your animal. This is especially true when working with bumblefoot on chickens. I've also got a tactical medical toolkit, and this has shears, 2 different sizes. Let me get these out. It's got a small and a large, and obviously if you're an EMT, you use this to cut clothes off, and it's got a nice little rounded tip on it so that you don't poke into the skin. I use them to cut feathers or to cut vet wrap, anything like that. It's also got little hemostats. It also comes with tweezers and a little pen light if you need it, but we're going to talk about something else that's even more helpful than a pen light. It's also good to have nail clippers. I've got a dog nail clipper, and these are a smaller set that I have, especially if I'm doing some of the chicken's nails, but they both work very well. I also have two different types of files. It's a metal nail file. It's fine. It's pretty rigid, and it does come in handy for some things, but I also like a regular, more flexible emery board for fine tuning. I also have a headlamp. Remember when I said there are things better than the pen light? These things are super great because having both hands free is going to make your life a heck of a lot easier. The other thing I have are readers, reading glasses, because let's face it, we're not getting any younger. And I swear, the print on the packages gets smaller and smaller. But really, these are simply a magnifier. So if you need to see something a little bit bigger when you're working on an animal, these are really handy to have. The next thing I want to talk about are bandages. I have two different size ace bandages. I've got little cotton squares. Sometimes I use these again with bumblefoot to kind of help with padding. I've got gauze pads. I have non-stick, both medium and large, non-stick pads with adhesive tabs. I have this self-adhesive bandage wrap. You might also know it as vet wrap, and I have it in different lengths and widths because this is great for a chicken, not so much for a horse, and vice versa. Unless you love cutting this stuff down, but it's so hard to work with. And the last thing you're going to want is some first aid tape to tape down your bandages if you need to. Most of all of these are pretty self-explanatory, but here's a few things I use that have been very helpful for more advanced wound care. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the honey calcium alginate dressing. Regular old calcium alginate dressings are used for wounds that produce a lot of drainage. I've got a little sample here. These ones are actually 2 inches by 2 inches, but I've been cutting them down, and you peel off and the honey is on that side, or the alginate part. But these are used for wounds that produce a lot of drainage. They are highly absorbent, so they're mostly used for pressure ulcers, but the cool thing is they promote healing by encouraging cell growth and collagen production. They also control infection and protect the skin because they don't stick to the wound bed and damage it when you're either removing it or when the animal moves. And if you get the ones infused with honey, it controls the growth of microbes and it acts as an autolytic debriding agent. And what does that mean? You probably are asking. Well, debridement is defined as removing dead, infected, or damaged tissue from a wound. You can remove it in several ways, to include cutting out the tissue. But autolytic debridement is when your body uses its own enzymes to remove the dead tissue. I think that's pretty cool, and I've used it with great success when treating my late German Shepherd's pressure wounds on her hips. She had 2 deep tunneling wounds that I was able to completely heal with these things. Next up are the hydrocolloidal dressings. And I have this size here and a smaller size here. They look like these, if you can see them. These do basically the same thing as the honey calcium alginate dressings, but they cannot be used on wounds that are deep or infected. They're best used for minor cuts, burns, or ulcers. They're made from a gel-like material, and it forms a protective barrier over the wound without having to add anything else to hold it in place. I personally use them on myself when I get deeper cuts, and I know there's a possibility of getting it dirty or wet, which is, let's be honest, all of the time. The next thing I want to go over is wound and skin care. The first up is clotting powder. This is a must for any of your animals, but especially for your chickens. If they break a feather or rip off a toenail, or if you're trimming their nails or their beak and you hit the quick, man, chickens bleed a lot. In fact, I just had this issue as I was preparing my list of things to put together a couple days ago. One of my chickens, one of my hens, Maddie, she ripped her toenail off and there was just pools of blood everywhere. So I brought her in and stood there for about 5 minutes, putting pressure on the wound and some clotting powder. And my bathroom now looks like a crime scene. I think I need a blood spatter expert. But anyway, clotting powder is essential to have on hand. Now, I've been using Clot It, but I think the company may have gone out of business, or maybe they're calling it something else, but you can't get it anymore. So what I did is I looked at comparable products and I put some of those alternatives in the description if you're looking for one, if you don't have any already. The next thing I want to talk about are Vetricin products. You do not have to use these Vetricin products if you find a similar other name brand, but I've been using them for years, so that's my go-to. I have a general spray. Now they make an all animal one, which I also have, and one specifically for poultry, one for horses, reptiles, but I looked at the ingredients and all of them are the same. So unless there's something I don't know, you can buy the regular one and use it on all your animals for topical wounds. It's a great spray to keep wounds clean and help prevent infection. I also use their eye wash and their eye gel. This is especially good for chickens since pecks to the eye and getting dust and dirt in them is not uncommon. The eye wash is, well, just an eye wash, and the gel is good to put on after to help with any irritation or to keep their eyes soothed. The last Vetricin product I have is their pink eye spray. This is great to help livestock who may be showing signs of pink eye, but it's also really good for helping soothe the eyes of any animal that may have irritation, allergies, or if they get any foreign materials in their eyes. Now, this does have a slightly different formulation than the other Vetricin sprays, so if you're going to use something in the eyes, I would go with one specifically for their eyes. The next product I want to talk about is a liquid bandage. Farnham makes a product called PuraShield Liquid Bandage Plus. It's for all livestock, and what it is basically a breathable, flexible spray bandage that helps keeps wounds, cuts, burns, sores, abrasions, insect bites, or scratches from getting germs in them. It also helps keep out insects and dirt. Again, I found this extremely helpful with my dogs when they had a wound that I couldn't easily wrap or bandage, or if they kept chewing the dressing. It's not meant for deep penetrating wounds, so stick to more minor wounds with this. I also have Epsom salt, not in the bag, it's in the container I keep it in. Epsom salt is actually magnesium salt. And yeah, there are no definitive studies showing that magnesium can be absorbed through your skin in sufficient amounts to address potential deficiencies of the mineral, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work. It's just not definitive. However, I know it helps me, and my vet recommends it. Do with that what you will. But it's great if you have an egg-bound chicken and need to act fast, or for hooves that have an abscess. The next thing I'm going to talk about is chlorhexidine. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. But this is the topical, not the oral version you may have gotten from your dentist if you've had oral surgery. This is an antimicrobial that is used to clean and disinfect skin. And the thing about this is it has residual activity. And what that means is it continues working for several hours after you apply it. So for example, the first line of attack for bumblefoot, you would make a diluted mixture of this and soak their foot for 10 minutes in the solution. After your chicken is done soaking, the chlorhexidine will continue to kill germs for a few more hours after that. But you don't want your animals to lick the area that you put it on for at least 30 minutes. The next thing I want to talk about is antibacterial ointment. You just have to make sure that it doesn't have any pain reliever in it. My go-to right now is medical Manuka honey or Manuka honey. It is much more costly than your normal, bacitracin ointments, generics, anything like that. But I'll tell you what, I have seen this stuff work wonders, from bumblefoot to using it on my dog who had those deep tunneling wounds from pressure sores. The cool thing is you can eat this. You don't want to eat it because it's really expensive, but you could eat this. But I had a pizza burn in the top of my mouth, as we all get when we eat really hot pizza. I'll never know why I don't wait until it cools down before I eat it. But I had a really bad burn on the top of my mouth and I put it on one night. It wasn't gone the next day, but man, it did not hurt the next day. And then I think it really helped it heal quicker than if I would have just let it go on its own. I just wanted to try it. And lastly, I want to talk about Highland's Prid Drawing Salve. It is homeopathic and it is not a black salve. It does not contain any of the corrosive black salve ingredients that you want to stay away from if you're not going to buy this. So you need to make sure you're looking for the following, and pardon my butchering of the words, sanguinarine, Sanguinaria canadensis, or bloodroot, whether alone or in combination with zinc chloride. Prid is pretty much the go-to for bumblefoot in chickens. Now, bumblefoot is called pododermatitis, and it usually occurs as a result of getting a cut or scratch on the foot that allows bacteria in, typically staph, and results in an infection and then an abscess. Now, Prid isn't going to get rid of the infection, but it will soften that black scab that forms so it can more easily be removed and allow something like the Manuka honey to penetrate the skin and do its job. The next grouping of things I want to talk about are oral medications. And the first up is Corid. And this is a very important tool in your kit, whether you have chickens, cattle, sheep, or goats. You're not going to find any of this that says it's for chickens because it's used off label, but it is effective. Just make sure to talk to your vet to get the dosage correct. If your animal is overwhelmed by coccidia, which is a parasite, it can kill them quickly. So having this on hand will allow you to treat them immediately since these parasites can multiply super fast. But here's a really important note on this treatment. It works by stripping the body of vitamins, specifically thiamine or B1, which the parasite needs to grow and reproduce. But your animals also need it too. So after treatment, not during the treatment, your animals are going to need to be given a supplement that contains B1 to help boost their depleted levels. Next up is calcium carbonate. If you've got a chicken that's egg-bound or having thin-shelled eggs, this is a good thing to have around so you can give them a high dose of calcium to get them through in the short term. It isn't meant to replace the regular calcium supplements such as oyster shells, lime, or eggshells that should be available to your chickens at all times. I also want to talk about antiparasitics such as Safeguard. Now, this is species specific, of course, so if you have livestock that have worms, you really want to start treatment immediately, but make sure you're using the correct version for them. And of course, you want to make sure you know for sure what parasites they have before you treat, since no one treatment is for every single parasite. But I keep Safeguard, which is fenbendazole, on hand for the chickens, since they typically get roundworms. And it's obvious when they have roundworms. This is the goat dewormer, but it's used off-label for chickens, and it has to be administered orally. Remember, I have this little thing. But the company does make Safeguard Aquasol, which is specifically for chickens, and it has no egg withdrawal period and is administered in their water. However, at the time my chicks first got worms, the only available option was to buy it by the liter, which was like $300. So needless to say, I went with the cheaper goat version and gave it individually to all my 16 chickens I had at the time for 5 days. And the single chicken who had them the worst had to get a second round 10 days later. Trust me, the $300 was looking pretty good after that first round. Safeguard now sells the Aquasol in a smaller size option, but it's really small. So it would definitely have covered that first round of treatment, but it would have been overkill for my single chicken. I am probably going to order a small bottle of the Aquasol, and then I'll just have both versions on hand. The next few items are going to be specific to chickens. The first is VetRx, and I have talked about this in other videos. It's basically just essential oils with a carrier oil. This is great to have on hand for chickens because it has several uses. I use it weekly in the coop to apply to their bedding to help freshen up the smell, and it's great for their respiratory system. Think of it as a combination of aromatherapy for the coop and Vicks Vapor Rub. It helps to manage the symptoms if your bird has a respiratory infection. You can also rub some onto your hands and then spread it under their wings and on the top of their head. You're also able to put it directly into their feed or water, but just be sure to read the directions. And to top it off, it's great for their combs, wattles, and legs, especially if you have showbirds. The next two things I'm going to talk about are if you have a very ill chicken. The first is Drench. Let's try saying that a lot of times fast. This is a concentrated liquid that delivers high energy vitamins, minerals, amino acids, electrolytes, and antioxidants in minutes. It basically boosts the immune system when they're sick, if they're on antibiotics, or if they're stressed from molting, shipping, or high temperatures. And to follow that up is the Rooster Booster Liquid B12. This is great for birds that are under a lot of stress or if they're anemic. It helps to increase appetite, energy, and weight gain. And of course, all of this is important because if your chick goes down, you want to be able to treat them as quickly as you possibly can. Lastly, I want to talk about prescription medications that are good to have on hand in case you need to treat immediately. My word of caution is use them only if you know what's going on and in conjunction with veterinary treatment. The first is prescription NSAIDs, or non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, like, ibuprofen, meloxicam, things of that nature. But don't give them the human version of these. They have ones that are specifically formulated for animals. These can be very important to have on hand, especially if you have equines like horses or donkeys that are not supposed to lay down for long periods of time. Because if they get injured, you've got to get them up and moving as soon as you can. And the best way to do that is to give them some pain relief. Some of the most common ones you'll see are phenylbutazone or bute, and that's used for orthopedic pain, and also benamine, which is more for soft tissue injuries. And those are both for horses and donkeys. Do not give them to anything else. Medicam is used for cows and off-label in chickens, but there is a withdrawal period for eggs, milk, and meat, so keep that in mind. And also make sure you're not giving them too much, so check with your vet before you administer any of that. The last thing I want to go over are antibiotics. Like in humans, I really prefer to do all I can as a prevention to keep my animals as healthy as possible, whether it's by fermenting feed, offering them herbs that boost their immune system, and feeding them organic or non-GMO feeds. And by not using or heavily limiting their exposure to toxic chemicals and substances. In this way, I can help their immune systems to keep everything in check, and that includes parasites. But sometimes there's really no getting around using antibiotics, especially if your animals are sick, and that's okay. Save them for the times when they're really necessary. But don't be afraid to use them if your animals are sick and they need them. All right, so that should about do it, for now anyway. Just remember, having the right medical supplies on hand can save your livestock's lives and give you peace of mind. I've also got this nifty bag that I keep everything in and carry around like I'm an actual EMT or something like that. If there's anything you use that I didn't talk about or maybe I'm not aware of, please let me know in the comments, because I always love hearing from you and learning new and better ways to do things. And thanks as always for joining me here on Tater Town.
And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you can see more videos that will help you do those things you never thought you could.